And one.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon. It's evening for us here in LA, but Jacqueline, what time is it there in Kenya?
It's very early in the morning. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:02 to be exact.
Wow. And where exactly are you?
Right now, I'm in Nairobi, Kenya.
Wow. Great.
Yeah.
Great. Tell me more about yourself. Tell me about your story. Tell me about your background, first and foremost.
So I am seventh born in a family of 10 kids. Both my mom and dad raised us mostly in a village called Monyo in Laikipia. So my dad had, in my tribe, because Kenya is divided into different tribes, about 42 of them or so. So in my tribe, we allowed polygamy. So you can marry as many wives as you can. So at one point, my mom and dad lived in my dad's side of the village, which was where we just buried them in a place called Kamge. So when my mom got her kids, she wanted a different lifestyle for them. So she wanted us to go to school. So when my younger brothers and myself were I was about maybe 5 years old, and the other kids were younger than me, my mom left to come and take my family to school. Mostly my elder brothers, my sisters, and myself. So when we got to this village called Monyo, we all went to school. Me, myself, my brothers, everybody went to school. So growing up at a very extended family, because when we left Kamge, we came to my maternal grandmother's compound. And it wasn't a small family either, it was very big, but we had a place to live and we had like access to school, which was what my mother wanted from the beginning. Because in my village, young girls at the age of 5, they start putting beads on your neck so that you're able to get married away after you get to a certain age. But my mom didn't want that for her girls. She wasn't learned herself, but she really wanted us to not live the same life she did. So hard work was very important in our family. And she was able to provide, but we weren't like extremely wealthy or we had like enough resources all the time. We just had enough to get us through day by day, and which for her was all she needed for us to be able to move on to the next step. So we shared chores in the house, we delegated a lot for the younger people to do smaller things, for the older ones to, carry on bigger tasks, like provide for the family with my mom. And so growing up in that environment kind of gave me the sense of hard work and teamwork most of the time, and just be, learning a lot from each other and leaning onto one another when the times are really difficult.
Wow, that's a fascinating beginning. Wow. I take it that your mom was a true inspiration in your life and was one of the guiding lights for your path.
Yes, she was everything. And being like the number 7 kid and like the last born girl, we had a relationship that was really strong on friendship and more motherly. And she was always there for me, and she taught me a lot of things as a girl. And she also taught me independence and self-reliance and acceptance, because sometimes as a young girl, you go through a lot of, changes. And some of those is peer pressure. And sometimes you don't feel like you're good enough. But my mom always told me, you're the best. Just keep doing what you're doing. And she was always there. And her not being there now feels like it's a loss. But even after I grew up and left Kenya, we still talked on the phone a lot. And sometimes when it was really tough, I would call her and she told me, when you look in the mirror, the girl looking back, she's stronger. She's going to do better. Just find a way. Like, take your time, do a lot of self-checks. She taught me a lot about self-checks. So every time you feel like there's no way, just self-check, go look somewhere. There's something in there that you haven't looked into. And yeah, I've always worked on those morals and they've helped me a lot.
Wow, fascinating, fascinating. Um, Tell us about the transition to the US. How did that come about?
Oh, that was definitely one of the what can I say? Because you see, when you're in Africa, we have a different picture of US. You see, the US we see in the movies. So my first stop was in El Paso, Texas, because I had an athletic scholarship to run track and field in the University of Texas at El Paso.
Wow. Oh,
So
that's a Division I school, isn't it?
yes, I
Wow.
ran I ran for them for about 3 years.
What sports? Which events?
I did, my specialty was the 800. I
Oh my
helped the 4 by
gosh.
4 Yeah, I helped the 4 by 4 and I did cross country during the cross country season just for endurance.
Oh my gosh. A very dear friend of mine was a world-class 400-meter runner. So I know that the two toughest races in athletics, track and field, I should say, are the 400 and the 800 meters. So you
Yes,
must be a tremendous runner.
I did. I did back in in the undergraduate. Now I just do exercise to keep fit. But yes.
Wow, wow. So tell me about that transition to Texas.
So anyway, I had a different picture. I was young. So in my mind, I am expecting the America I see in the movies. And I end up in El Paso, Texas. Paso, Texas, the following morning, it's very dry, it's very cold, and I'm thinking, this is not America. It shouldn't be like this. It should be like, tall buildings, busy streets, what's going on? So I asked one of my roommates, like, are we in America? And she goes, yes, we're in America. You're actually in El Paso. And I'm thinking, no, 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 no. Where is the America that I have in my mind? So my coach calls me to go to get my things to get my school started. And I ask coach, are we in America? He goes, yes, Jackie, you're in America. And this is your track. He gave me like the tour of the school and the track and, gave me the schedule of the training, but I wasn't prepared. So come to going, like I had to go shopping for my bedding and things that I needed to kind of get me started. So I go to downtown El Paso and everybody speaks Spanish. And I'm like, wow, this is not America. I need different because I know Americans speak English. What is going on? And one of the girls that I went with was from Mexico. So she spoke Spanish. And she only spoke Spanish and a little bit of English. And I spoke English. So we became friends because I really needed somebody to help me out. And she needed somebody to help her out with English, even though my English was a bit British with an African accent, but I was able to get us through many things, like shopping in Albertsons or other places. But I needed help with downtown El Paso and other things that required me to speak Spanish, and I didn't know a word in Spanish. So this girl helped me with the Spanish. So every time we'd go shopping, we'd smile at each other and be like, yay, yay, shopping, yes, and we go. And we shop, I give her money, she buys, I point, she picks it up, she speaks in Spanish, and I get my change and we keep moving. Same thing when we went to the English part of the shopping. I would do the same for her, and she did the same for me. And a lot, throughout my time in El Paso, the culture was almost like the extended family. In Africa, we have that, like the extended family part of the culture. The food, the eating, the dancing, it was part of my growing up. So it wasn't that far away from where I came from, other than the language barrier. But generally, my transition from Kenya to El Paso, Texas, I think it gave me time to grow and time to learn. Because I think if somebody dropped me in New York, I wouldn't have learned a lot. But El Paso gave me time to adjust, to know different cultures, to learn different things about America in general. And I'm grateful for that.
Jackie, explain to our listeners, people who are going to hear this at some point in time, many times as native born, citizens of US, we take for granted the difficulties of the transition that immigrants must make, not only in terms of language, culture. We see you, and of course, we are so accustomed to our native environments, our native languages, and thinking those languages. But talk about that for a second. And yeah, I mean, English is your second language, I take it.
Yes.
And you actually probably speak a little Spanish as well now, right?
Yes, I do. Yes.
A lot of people, and I'm very fortunate to have had experience with this in the past. What language do you think in? Do you translate? Are you able to really fluently think in English? Some people have to think in their native language and then translate that into English and then react. Talk to our listeners about the difficulties of overcoming the language barrier, first of all, and then talk about the assimilation barriers, some of the things that probably you had to encounter that perhaps might seem very quote unquote normal for us. But, when you first encountered it, there were things that you had to make adjustments to. Talk about those things. And I have no preconceived notions, in terms of, I haven't had a chance to interview you before, so I don't know what's about to occur, but I can just, I have a feeling that it's going to be fascinating hearing you talk about, because so many times that is a major issue for our students, both domestically as well as internationally.
Okay. So, so where do we start with the language barrier?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
talk about the language barrier.
So I mostly speak English now, but I used to mostly rely on my Swahili, because Swahili is what we're taught from when we were young. But on top of speaking Swahili, I have my dialect, which is Turkana. So growing up in a household where everybody was Turkana, Turkana is technically what you learn first. So I learned to speak in Turkana, and sometimes the Turkana language has different, like past tense, when you say beautiful in Turkana, it means a different thing in Swahili, or it gives it like a past tense, or it gives it like a male sound of it, like, the difference part. So when I first got to America, I had to write a composition, an essay. So when I wrote my essay, it was really me writing with my, my thinking as a Turkana girl writing. First, I had to think in Turkana, translate into Swahili, which I had to later on transfer into English. In this case, it wasn't American English, it was British. So it had a lot of different, like, color, I had you on it, different things that when I got my paperback, I was really like, oh my God, what is going on? So I had to sit down and ask the teacher, why did you cross on the color? It's written like that. Why did you have to punctuate that and it's supposed to flow like that? So I still have those issues, especially when it comes to punctuations. And sometimes I just write and I forget that, I'm not, I still have my British, my Turkana background, my still thinking it's not American straight. So it still has a little bit of effect sometimes, even with my grades right now, because I write and then I'm like, oh my God, I have to go back and rewrite it to fit the American way of writing. So it was a challenge, and I had to really get a lot of help. So for my school, at least in El Paso, I had a lot of tutors, and we had to make appointments to get your papers rewritten, reread, so that you can write it properly. And that alone kind of helped me a lot, because I had appointments almost every week when I had a paper to turn to my teacher, that somebody had to go through my paper with me, and I had to rewrite how they think it's supposed to be written in American English. So it was like I had to take an extra step to get me to where I wanted to be, to like improve my grades, to please my coach, because I needed a good GPA to continue running and to maintain my scholarship. And
Right.
I couldn't afford to fail, especially because of my writing.
Wow.
So
Wow.
that's how I got through that handle. The same thing happens to diseases. When I was studying nursing, it was different. For me, I had never gone to a hospital until my first clinical rotation. So everybody knew about a bedpan, everybody knew about Yankees and things that the hospital people use because one way or another, there's a family member with diabetes, hypertension, and I didn't grow up knowing all that. I grew up knowing if you're sick, my mama is just going to smash some herbs, you drink, you're good to go. So we didn't even have names for these diseases. So I had to learn like identifying things. So when everybody has a certain level, I was literally working hard to get to them and try to surpass them just a little bit more so that I'm comfortable. And the pressure of school and the pressure of learning terminologies, it was different. And it wasn't that easy, but it was manageable with all the help I got.
Wow, that's a remarkable, remarkable story. Wow. I'm so impressed. I'm so inspired. I'm so happy that you're allowing us to have this information, to feel comfortable enough to share it with us. And we, in turn, I'm sure you'll be an inspiration to other people. So I'm just really delighted. You talked about nursing. Why did you go into nursing?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so when you get a scholarship, it has like, they send me an I-20 for international students. So mine was for political science and international studies because I wanted to go to law school. And being a lawyer has always been my dream because growing up in my family, my dad used to be like a council chief in the community. And my mom was very upfront. She liked to defend people. And I always have this example where one day the local people wanted to ban this he was about maybe 15 years old. And my mom didn't want that kid to be killed because supposedly he had stolen from somebody. So my mom covered this kid with her own skirt and said, if you want to prosecute this kid, he has to go through the regular channels, take him to police, get him to court, and get the judge to hear what's going on with him. But you can't just take the law into your own hands and decide to ban this kid with a tire and kill him. And everybody in the community just nodded and they allowed the kid to go through the proper channels. And for me, that inspired a sense of, rightness, standing up for the right thing or trying to help people, because that kid could have been hurt. Were it not for my mom, who was thinking like they need to go through the proper channel, they would have killed that kid. But they didn't because somebody was sober enough to say, you know what? No, you have to go through the proper channel. And that's why I wanted to be a lawyer. So now going back to being a nurse. So University of Texas at El Paso did not have law school. They have pre-law classes, they have political science classes, but as an international student, we had to provide for ourselves. So during my third year of undergraduate, one of the students from Kenya told me, Jackie, what are you planning on doing? Like when we're just having a talk, I told him, I want to be a lawyer. He told me, there's no law school in El Paso, but you could do something else so that you can support your law school, which in this case, you could do nursing. It will employ you immediately, probably once you pass your NCLEX, and at least you'll be able to pay your own school fees once you're done with running. And I did the math in my head real quick. And I said, you know what? Sure, let me do, I'll do nursing. It was like towards the end of the fall semester. And so they were taking the students, no, it was towards the end of the spring. So they were taking the students for the fall semester. So I had a lot of classes to cover in order for me to get to the next cohort for the nursing program. So the summer, I knew I had to work hard. And before you go to the nursing program, there is a test called TEAS. I only had 3 days to do that test because I just changed my mind that I want to do nursing. And so I had to move everything to accommodate nursing within like 3 days. So
Wow.
first I had to call my advisor and tell her I want to do nursing. And she's like, no, you can't. It's so hard. You can't do it. And I'm like, you know what? Let me do it. Let me fail. And I'll believe that it was hard. And then I had to tell my coach. He was like, Jackie, it takes a lot of time and you're not going to be able to practice and do everything. I'm like, coach, let me do it. If I don't have time to practice, we'll talk about it. So, and then there was this TEAS exam that I needed to do. It needed about $95 and I only had $95 in my account, or 96. So I paid for it. They told me to come and show up and do the test the next day. So I did, and I went and did the test. And I finished and it printed out my results. And I looked at the guy who was a proctor. I'm like, did I pass? And told me, yes, you passed. So I'm like, so I can become a nurse. He goes, no, you can apply to nursing school and you can go through the program altogether. I'm like, okay. So now I have to find out how to apply to nursing school and all this. But the friend of mine who talked to me was already in nursing school. So he helped me like apply for it and do everything else that I was needed to do. And that's how I ended up in nursing.
Wow, wow, wow. What a fascinating, you said something interesting to me that I'd like to just focus on just for a second. And what you said was that you want people to allow you to be able to fail, really meaning that you wanted to succeed. And if failure was the ultimate outcome, you would accept that, but you wanted a chance to succeed is what you really meant.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that philosophy. Tell me about who instilled that in you. What instilled that in you, that desire to overcome and survive if just given the chance?
So it goes back to my mom because she was a rock, And every time we didn't have a good shoe to play a sport or a good uniform, she would always be like, you know what, show up with your torn clothes and your torn shoes. You would rather have them tell you can't play than you failing yourself, even without trying. So get yourself in there, give it a shot. If they like what you're doing, or get the shoes. If you like what you're doing, or buy the books. But get yourself in there, get a seat and sit down and participate. That's all you have to do. And I've been doing that my whole life. I've just been getting myself in there and participating.
You really fit the mold of the UWLA student and the spirit of what we do at UWLA. Making certain that people have an opportunity to overcome some of these typical hurdles and allowing people to have that opportunity to fail. That's what University of West LA is really all about. And so I'm so proud of you and so proud of this opportunity. Talk about your studies. How did you find UWLA? How did we fit into your life?
Oh, this is fascinating. So first I started with the Trinity Law School in Santa Ana. So while we were there as a first year student, everybody was talking like we had to take the baby bar. And, as students, we like to share a lot. And that's how I learned about UWLA. Because everybody was like, you have to take the baby bar or you can go to a different school and continue without worrying about the baby bar. So I'm like, okay. So usually I'm a logical person. So I weigh my options. What works for me? So I wanted to study for the baby bar, but I had, by then my son was about 6 months and I was still working full time as a nurse to provide for my family. And my husband is in the military. So he's in and out of the country most of the time. So I'm weighing all these options and I'm thinking, do I really want to study for the baby bar or can I apply to another school? So I took a summer off to kind of just think all these things. And one of the girls I was with in class at Trinity told me there's this school called UWLA. You don't need to take the baby bar. You can apply to it. I told her, okay. So what do I do? She said, just call them up and talk to them and see if they can accept you to go into their school. And I'm getting this feeling like I probably will need to get to this school because I don't want to do the baby bar. So I made the decision I don't want to do the baby bar and I called. And I think I spoke to Danielle or somebody who told me what to do. And I think I did it the same day and submitted everything. And I went for an interview, and I got interviewed, and I was like, I don't know whether I passed or not, but I needed to get myself there. So when I got the letter of acceptance, I was like, hey, I got into the UWLA. I can't even believe it. And still I have all these other responsibilities, and now there is a drive. So I had to make a decision also, which was like, I had to hire somebody to help me take care of my son as I drive back and forth during my school day, which, it all worked out, because when I got to UWLA, I felt at home. Trinity was where I started, but UWLA is where I felt more comfortable, because here I found that there was a lot of help as long as I asked for it. And I asked for it a lot from my teachers, from my student, like former, like my classmates, from everybody. Like sometimes I'm very slow at taking my notes because I like to write them down, and some students like to type them. And when I'm a little bit behind on my notes, I would ask somebody to kind of share it with me or discuss it with me. And I got that in UWLA. When I was in Trinity, I didn't get that. There was a library in UWLA. I didn't get that in my other school. There was an environment where I encouraged a lot of group work and teamwork here compared to where I came from previously. And there's a level of communal friendship in UWA, and I like that. And I feel more relaxed, and I think I'm able to achieve in UWA more.
Wow, wow, wow. I'm, as president of the university, when you hear, we've tried to develop that from the top and all through the ranks. And to hear that it's filtering through to the students is just overwhelming to me. It's very humbling to me, I must tell you, because that's what we've tried to achieve, exactly what you said. And to know that the people that work at UDLA have embraced these standards, and it's filtered down to the students. And it really is so inspirational to me. It's a hard job doing what we do, the academic world, but your story has just strengthened me, and inspired me to try to make UWA even a better place. Tell me about your classes. Which of your classes do you enjoy the most?
Wow. I have, okay. Last semester I had, not community. I had federal taxation law. It's a prerequisite, not a prerequisite.
Prerequisite.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry. It's a prerequisite?
No, it's not a prerequisite. It's an elective.
Elective. Got it. Okay. Yes. Got you.
I didn't know I would like that class, but for some reason I do.
Wow.
I loved it. I don't know why. So I really loved it a lot. And I also like con law. I had it with Professor Cheney. Con law 1, right now I'm taking con law 2. There is taught. Taught for me is one of those classes that when the professor is teaching, I'm like, I'm really good at it, and I know what he's talking about, but I have to go back and read more about it. Otherwise, once it's gone, it's gone. Remember, this is like different laws compared to what I've known my entire life. Right. So I still have to go back to my fundamentals. And when everybody else is learning this much, I have to learn a little bit more to kind of get to the level of everybody. So, and I also loved the, it's not community property. I don't know why that name is missing in my brain. It's like family law class.
It is community property.
Is it community property? Yes, community property. It's not real property. Yes, community property. I also loved that class a lot. The professor was really, he taught a lot, and I liked his teaching method, and it kind of hammered a lot of things into my mind. And I think that's why I did good in that class too.
Wow. Contrast. No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
Every semester, at least I have 1 or 2 classes that I'm really good, liking. and I'm learning more about it. And I am enjoying law school all in all. It's fun for me.
How many more classes do you, how long before you graduate?
I'm planning on graduating December.
Wow.
Yes.
Sitting for the February bar?
Yes.
Wow, wow. How have we done as a university in helping students to transition to virtual learning? You know, we're conducting this interview online. You're in Kenya, I'm in LA. But how has it gone taking classes from Kenya to UWLA virtually?
I think it makes law school accessible to everybody, especially for me, because I remember in 2020 I lost my brother. That's the first time I had to stop my classes. So when I lost my brother in 2020, it was still a physical class, so it wasn't through the Zoom link. So when I came back, like a month later, see, if I had Zoom, I probably would not have stopped classes. But since there was no Zoom, I had to stop classes altogether. So the transition kind of makes school accessible. It makes student available, because sometimes I know we have a lot of things, because as personally, like this 3 weeks has been really hard for me. And were it not for Zoom, I wouldn't probably have gotten the energy to get into class. But with Zoom, I will get in there. I know I will listen, I will learn, and then there's a recording that if I, at the end of the day, for the last 3 weeks, I think I'll have to go back and listen to those recordings.
Wow.
That makes law school accessible, and I feel like it gives me the opportunity to be able to take my class with me everywhere, unlike before. Before I had to come to class physically, but now I'm able to go everywhere with my class, even when I'm not like 100% there. I know I can listen to the professor. I have questions I will ask them, but I'll be able to be in class, and I think that's a good thing. I know that I answered your question.
Yeah, no, that you did answer it. Tell me, Jackie, what do you want to do after law school?
I have a lot of things. I have a lot of things planned for me to do after law school. So after law school, I will definitely practice as an attorney somewhere. I would also want to be able, if possible, teach somebody something, be able to share the knowledge I'm learning, hopefully become a professor at one point. And, I want to be able to give back to the people who raised me. I was raised in a community. I want to be able to share what I've learned with that community. In what I'm saying. Where I went to bury my parents last week, this community is very small, but most of those girls haven't gone to school. And telling them that I've gone to school and I have a family, I have a husband, I have a kid, they don't believe it, because they think that as a woman, you're supposed to raise children, stay in a house, and just your base thing that in life is just to provide for your family when you are cooking or taking care of the family in general. But I think there is a way you can do that as a woman, a woman who has gone to school. And I want to be able to bring that to these kids. Like, we can provide for our families, we can take care of our husbands and our wives, but on top of that, we also can learn, and we can be better at doing it.
Wow. You and I, share somewhat of a very similar story, because I had that same desire. I came from, very poor roots in, Los Angeles, but it was always my desire to gain education, both in business and law, and bring it back to my community, because I thought that that was a way that I could really improve the environment that I came up in, and deal with some of the systemic oppression that was rooted in some of the problems that people like me confronted especially in South Central LA. So I really salute you for that. I would volunteer to virtually talk to those girls if you would set it up someday, I'd love to invite them to UWLA and tell them about, our experience and the fact that UWLA is a place that really welcomes people from all over the world. That's our mission. Our community is our world. And we're there to help all people improve their life. And, as you can see through the logo, the slogan over my right shoulder, liberation through educational empowerment is what we're really all about.
Yeah.
So I feel very strongly about that. And I'd love to share that message with those young girls. I'm very fortunate to have two daughters myself. And I always wanted for them to do not only better than me, but also to be independent, exactly what you said, to be able to provide for their families, to be good wives, but to be able to bring something to the table and be independent so they weren't dependent on anybody necessarily. I think that made them better teammates to their respective partners and gave them a sense of self-esteem and self-worth through their own financial empowerment. So I believe very strongly in that myself. And so if there's a way that we can support you in that, I'm at your disposal. I just want you to know that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And also I want you to know that, after your completion of your studies at UWLA, I'm certain that we have a number of different alums out there who would love to find somebody like yourself. And I certainly would like to personally make some references for you so that we can help you, move on to that next step and become a professional lawyer. I know you'll do it. I have no doubt about it. You have the most important ingredient, which is the perseverance and the drive to do it. And that's what it takes first and foremost. Obviously, you have the intellect to do it, but you have that drive to do it. And, I can tell through your expression, you're not going to let anything stop you. And I would encourage you not to let anything stop you, because nothing can stop you except for yourself now.
Yes.
You're there, you're there. And I know that, we really embrace you as part of our UWA family. I mean that sincerely. And it's not just while you're a student, because you're always going to be a member of the family in one way or another. And we're going to look for ways to really promote that. Anything you'd like to say in closing? I know I've kept you, I know it's been a long, I could talk with you forever. And most people know that I talk too much. And I'm certain that there are people that are saying, gosh, I wish you would let her talk more, but I'd like for you to talk more. Is there anything that you would like to add about, the struggle, about now where you are? You still got to face the California bar, which you'll be very successful on. But, in terms of your mission in life, share with us just a little bit more about, when you talk, are you going to go immediately back to Kenya once you take the bar, or are you going to, be, multicultural, in terms of, living in part, practicing in part in California or wherever in the United States, as well as Kenya? And contrast just for a moment. I know I'm asking a lot of questions, but contrast just for a moment the laws in Kenya versus our laws in the United States. So I've asked you a lot of questions, so break it up as best you would like to respond.
Okay. So I would definitely work partially in the California, and I would be, traveling back to Kenya to help the groups of people that I think, need my help. And the laws in Kenya are really like, they're different, they are governed differently. Like, for example, when there is a case, like right now, my brother has a case in the court, and it's been going on for a little over 2 years. There's a lot of dragging, a lot of waiting. So I feel like the system is not, let's get the bad guy, it's more like who can silence who quicker. Because if the assailant is able to call out on the lawyer from the other side and threaten them in front of the magistrate, I feel like that's not even, it's unsafe, And so we have to find a way to protect this lawyer that my family has hired so that we can keep her alive. Because if this guy is like openly threatening her in front of the magistrate, and the magistrate, the only thing she says is, hey, watch yourself. You can't threaten people like that in front of me. And there is no repercussions at all. Like there is no consequences for threatening, a person who is representing a court, So I feel like in America, the laws are different. Nobody can openly threaten an attorney in front of a judge. Or if there is, I've not seen one. Maybe I need more experience with that.
No.
And the laws here too are like, there's a lot of corruption. Let me just cut to it. There's a lot of corruption and there is a lot of silencing, especially the village where my family is. There's a lot of bad people doing bad things and getting away with it because they can, And America, there's things that don't, they kind of trigger my moral compass, and I feel like that's wrong. But it's not in the level is a little bit milder compared to what I experienced here in Kenya the last 3 weeks. Here you're like, that's a crime. Somebody should get arrested, but nobody is doing it. There's a lot of communal policing, and that causes a lot of mayhem and a lot of fighting and a lot of unnecessary killing, And I think that we're in the 21st century, and we need to move a little bit higher in respect to the laws that govern people. There is laws, but nobody is following them. Take, for example, the traffic lights here in Nairobi. There's traffic lights in Nairobi, but most of the drivers don't even pay attention to them. So it's quite different. What other question did you ask? It was like a lot of them.
Gosh, I'm fascinated by your answer. My brain is trying to still process that answer and trying to think in my mind, how that could be corrected. As a U.S. lawyer, my thought process always goes to how do we fix that? How do we make it better? How do we make society better? How do we input justice into these situations? Because, we do have a very strict system of laws. We don't permit a lot of corruption. If when you can discover corruption, identify corruption, those people, can be subject to severe penalties.
Yes.
And it is to protect the system. The system has to be such that, justice is provided equally and fairly and justly. And so we protect that system. And I'm just trying to figure out, how do we protect that system that you describe? How do we shroud it such that, people have to pay penalties for acting corruptly or intimidating other people, so that, it becomes a matter of who's stronger, who can fight better, rather than, really who is principally right based upon the circumstances and facts.
Yeah.
For a long time, the African continent has had a lot of discontent. There's been a lot of poverty, not unlike all the other places in the world. You go to India, or you go to China, or you go to Eastern Europe, South America, you see a lot of poverty and dysfunction in those communities. In the United States, throughout many parts of the United States, you see a lot of poverty and dysfunctionalism. What would be one of the ways of addressing that in Kenya in particular? Because I know that people think of Africa as just one country, one continent, and it's I don't think they recognize that there's 58 countries in Africa. I'm sorry?
It's humongous. I'm saying Africa is it's humongous. It's different countries, different cultures, different languages. So I will keep referring back to this village where my dad used to live right now. So in this village, there's a school. but there's a primary school. It's like the middle school before you go to
Yes.
high school. So there's a primary school in this school, but this community is what we call the nomad. It's a nomadic community. So these are people who move from one area to another in search of green pastures for their animals. This is a community that believes that the girl child needs to be beaded so that they can get married. It's a community that believes a boy child needs to graze so that they can get the animals for the family, so they can get milk, they can get meat to eat, and the family, sells them for others, other stuff like food, salt, sugar, and stuff like that. So I believe that every time I would let me go back. Back when I was in class 3, my dad came from the village to my mom's village. He wanted me and my younger brother to go with him back to his village, to the traditional village now. So my mom was like, no. My dad wanted me to go so that I can get the beads and get married when I come to age, which in this case is about the age of 12 or 13. But my mom didn't want that to happen. And my dad and my mom had like a big fight and a fallout. But my dad was usually the guy that he was he was lean to me. So every time I had like an issue with him, I would just come and sit down and talk to him. I was young, but I was able to talk him to letting me go to school. I remember telling him that if I go to school, I'll be able to help you take care of the family. I just wanted to go to school. And he was quiet for about 5 minutes or so. And he was like, so you're telling me you want to go to school? I told him, yes, I want to go to school. And me going to school will be able to help you in the long run. And so he was like, since you told me that, I'll let you go to school and I'm not going to complain again. And that was the last time he and I had a conversation of me leaving school to go get married. And
How old were you?
maybe about 7.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, every now and then anyway, he would bring up that conversation like, remember you told me when you go to school you'll help me? I told him yes, and I helped him. And when I started earning my living, every time he asked for a new pair of glasses, a new pair of trousers, I made sure he got it because he was my to-go-to person. We would talk, and we never really had any bad relationship. Like you would say a kid and her father had a bad relationship. I never had any bad relationship with both my parents because I was more like a communicator. I didn't like trouble. I would stay away from trouble as much as possible because I would rather self-report than get myself in trouble. But my dad and I would just talk and he would be like, so now which grade are you? What school, in which school are you? He died and I had promised him to fly him to the US to come and see what I do there.
Wow.
But,
Wow.
so that's a different story. So let's go back to this village. So this village, people are nomads. So they move from one village to another. They believe in their animals and they believe in their daughters to get married so that they can get more animals. I'm thinking if I can get a way that the kids can go to school, even though the community believes that being married is important, it's important. So being married is important, and so is school. So if this kid gets married at the age of 12, there's about 12 years here in between that she could learn and get better, and she could help her family one way or another. So the aim is not to kind of just wipe out this notion, because once you push that into them once, they will oppose it and they'll start fighting you. But if you gradually show them the importance of education, the importance of letting the girl child go to school, I think they will be more open to letting them go to school. And also the boy. There is a system that doesn't work because school in Kenya starts from 8 o'clock in the morning to around 3 o'clock in the evening. I think it does that everywhere, Monday through Friday. But there, these families, the boys have to graze. So from 10 o'clock to around 3 o'clock, that's when the cows need to go. So if I can find a way to make sure that the boys go to school and the girls from 7 o'clock in the morning to about 10 o'clock, At least they will get education for those 3 hours in the morning. And when the cows and the goats come, when the animals come back in the evening, they can get another about 3 hours in the evening, from 4 o'clock to around 7 o'clock. And the cycle goes on, because then they don't have to worry about somebody who will take their animals to graze, because the boy will take the animals to graze, but he will still get his education in the morning and in the evening. But you push it to a point where they just have to go to either school or go to graze. Most of them choose the graze. And if you want to improve a community, I believe education is the way to do it, because then you get lawyers in that community, you get nurses in that community, you get teachers, you get doctors, and that way the community can grow. And education, for me, I believe is the way out.
Wow. I'm fascinated. I'm absolutely fascinated. I could talk to you all day long. Let me ask you another question. The economy in Kenya. You talked about, the nomadic aspects of it, but give us a picture as a whole what the economy in Kenya, and in particular in your area, Nairobi, what's that economy look like?
Oh, Nairobi is rich. Nairobi is, Nairobi, right now I live in Karen, where my sister-in-law lives. So it's up, it's almost first world level of the economic part. But near Karen, there's Kibera slums. So it's 50-50. You have the well-up communities and you have the poor communities. And the gap is quite there. You can literally see it. You have the people who have and the people who don't. And it's just all over Kenya, unfortunately. So I don't know how to
Is it a service-based economy, or is it agricultural? Is it manufacturing? What's some of the basis for the economy?
It technically depends. Nairobi is service-based right now. In the villages, is agricultural-based. Mm-hmm. But in Nairobi, is service-based. Everything here is service.
And how do women fit into the economy? Are women welcomed, invited into working opportunities?
In Nairobi, yes. In Nairobi, it's 50-50. You get 50 women in the office, 50 men in the office. But in the villages, it's mostly the male population that provides. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what about in your colleges, in your school system? I suspect, based upon what you said, that it's highly disproportionate with men mostly going to college, or am I inaccurate in that assumption?
Yes, men are mostly the ones that go to college, but I think the numbers are improving, because the second president of Kenya was very keen in educating the girl child. He had many more girls in different parts of Kenya. So the girl child is a little bit more educated. I think my generation of girls, excuse me.
Sure.
So I was saying, like, my generation of the girl child is more educated in most parts of most parts of Kenya, where the tribe lives in education. The other tribes, like my tribe now, most of them are not educated, because majority of that tribe lives in mostly on the drier parts of Kenya, and they have their own governing system. But as long as you've lived a little bit towards the city, towards Nairobi, more developed parts of Kenya, most of the girls have gone to school. But if you live like in the back, there is the front Kenya and there is the back Kenya. If you live in the back Kenya side of the country, less education for the girl child.
Gotcha. Wow. Jackie, we've been talking for almost an hour now. This has been just a fascinating discussion. I could go on and on, but I think it's only fair for us to come to a close now. Is there anything that you would like to impart to our UWA family? We will be, embracing you from afar right now, looking forward to you coming back. But, would you like to say anything to our UWA community, our family in closing? Any closing thoughts?
Thank you, Professor Brown, for taking your time to interview me today and for sharing my story with the UWLA. You see, UWLA has been home for me for the last couple of years. And if I was to do it again, I think I'll come back to UWLA. I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot of friends through UWLA. And it's an environment that, all in all, through law school, the law school experience is supposed to be hard, but UWLA made it easy and manageable for me. And that's something that, I'll always carry with me everywhere I go from here on. And thank you for, even allowing me to be in UWLA and learning from you, UWLA professors and my college students, and generally from the staff, from the people who work in the library, to the people who give me the Zoom links when I need them, to everybody that helped me in UWLA. I really, really, really appreciate them. And I always try my best to appreciate everybody, even the person who cleans the toilet, and tell them thank you so much, because without them, the system would not have been as smooth as it is. So
Well,
it just shows how much from the top, everybody is doing a wonderful job. So it trickles down to even the lower people, and it gives people like me a chance to grow and learn peacefully.
wow. I'm delighted. Provost Friedberg told me that I would be really intrigued by your story, and he was absolutely right. I can't wait till you come back to LA so that we can have a chance to sit down face to face. Maybe if we can go out to dinner and I can, listen to you. I'm so intrigued by your story, so inspired. I don't think you really know how you've inspired so many other people through this, who are, grappling with whether or not they can be successful, whether they can overcome the things that they've overcome. And then to listen to your story, you've had so much to overcome. And I think that everyone who experiences this video will, I'm certain, agree with me that you are going to be a success. You are going to make a difference in the world. And I'm just glad and I'm humbled that you chose UWLA to be a part of that foundation for your life, because when we did this, when we put this together, this university, we had a dream too that there would be a Jackie Ekai out there somewhere in the world who could benefit from it. All of our colleagues, all of our professors, Professor Cheney and Professor Friedberg and all of them, Professor Hayes, Glassman, all the professors out there. I hate to even mention any for failure of missing some, like Susie Marjani and Steve Mancini and all the people who, we do it because we thought that there was going to be a Jackie Ekai out there somewhere in the world who would find us and would be able to transform herself through the education that we present. And indeed that happened. So that reality and listening to you think that we inspired you, you've actually inspired us tremendously. And I'm so proud that you're a product of this institution. I know you're going to go out there in the world and make us proud, and know that it doesn't end with graduation. You are forever part of this family. I heard you talk about the notion of someday become a professor. I'm going to ask Provost Friedberg to keep an eye on you. And, we pride ourselves on not only producing good intellectuals, but people who also have practiced law. who are good practitioners who can come back into the fold and teach, the new students how to not only be lawyers, but how to practice the law, to really create justice for our society. We really believe in that. So I know you'll be a part of that. So again, thank you for taking this time. Since I've grown from this, this has been such a great experience. And I look forward again to welcoming you back to UWLA, coming back home to LA as soon as that opportunity presents itself. But, again, make certain that the circumstances are right. Thus far, we've been very successful with the virtual learning, online learning. We're going to continue that. But, again, you're welcome home via the online experience or actually, in residence at our campus. So thank you for this time. I meant it, I was very sincere. If there's a group of young women or young men that we can speak to virtually and, be inspirational to, just call on me, let me know. Also, I wanted to mention to you, I did my ancestry, and like most Afro-Americans, I am primarily from the Congo and Nigeria. So that is I'm 60%, 55% Nigerian and or from the Congo. So my roots are in Africa as well as most Afro-American people, but I did do my ancestry, and I know that the Congo and Nigeria is west of where you are in Kenya.
Nigeria is west, Congo is just central. It's
right,
from here.
Right, exactly. So that's my background as well. So so happy that So thank you for this evening. I'm gonna let you go. Thank you so much, Jackie, for being with us. And again, I look forward to seeing you in the flesh, not in the not too distant future. Take care.
Thank you, Professor
Thank
Brown.
you. Take care now. Bye-bye.